You're a technical wizard, Patrick.
I wouldn't go that far.
You are listening to the Spent the Rent podcast. And now, here's your host, Patty Rose.
Hello, I am Patty Rose. Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. My guest today is a longtime musician from Eugene, Oregon, with an incredible voice and amazing songwriting ability, Lea Jones. Lea, welcome to the show.
And your guest, Patty Rose.
Yeah, the voice Spent the Rent podcast as well. You recorded the intro for me a while back. Lea has been a guest numerous times talking about everything from music to your health woes, politics. I don't want to downplay it. That sounded like I'm just like, anyway. Lea's become a really good friend. And like I said in my notes, you mentioned even provided the recording at the very beginning of this at every episode that introduces me, and I appreciate that so much. You have the that deep voice that I love. I saw you first at the Willamette Valley Opry, and I knew that I wanted to get to know you. And it's when I started this podcast, I wanted to reach out to musicians, business owners, politicians, that kind of stuff that don't get a lot of coverage, that I don't get to see the local people's, in-depth conversations. And so I reached out to you, and since then I think I've had you on now, what, 5 times?
About that many, yeah. I don't know why, but you keep doing it, so I keep coming back.
Well,
I
appreciate
to talk,
it. Yeah, and I also like that we have become good friends, multi-generational. Two of us. I think I'm in my 30s and you're in your 40s. I don't know. I really do enjoy your friendship, and
I'm
I think
old enough to be your grandfather, dude.
Both my grandparents are in heaven. Well,
yeah.
So Lea, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today. We're going to talk about your health. Unfortunately, you have been battling cancer, so we're going to get an update on that a little bit. You've been on in the past talking about communicating well with cancer and how difficult that can be. So we're going to get to that in a bit. We're going to mention and talk a lot today about your new song. It's an old song, a rewrite. It's from 1988. It's a song called "I'm Not a Stranger."
I am not a stranger.
And first of all, just let's talk about the song. So tell me about the song. I'm not going to be able to play it till the very end. Hopefully everybody hangs out and checks that out because it's awesome.
Yeah, well, if you can't stay around to the end of the podcast, you can find it on Lea 99 Jones on YouTube, and it's also on buffaloromeo.bandcamp.com. I am not a stranger. It's not a rewrite. I didn't change any words at all. Actually, we just re-recorded the song because we recorded it in 1990 with canned marimbas, like sampled marimbas, and me playing acoustic guitar, and then a whole bunch of vocals. It was written about an experience I had trying to run around the park, the waterfront in Chicago. And I'm 35 years old at the time, I think, and I've never, ever been around urban Black people. And there was I think rap music. When did rap start?
I mean, you can argue about early 80s, late 70s, but really, so not until late 80s,
1988. I'm in Chicago, and in the middle of my self-help folk music thing. And I wrote this thing about this experience being in Chicago, where I was attempting to run, and I'm struggling. I'm a terrible runner. And there were these 3 Black guys, very, tough, burly looking Black guys coming the other way. And I just got weirded out. I was nervous about it. And the guy in the middle was just staring at me, and I'm going, oh shit, man. And what did I do? I can't help it. And I'm getting more and more nervous. And finally he goes, you can do it. You can do it. Just encouraging me in my running. I was like, and it was this major breakthrough. It sounds so silly, but
no, that's what it takes.
It was this major breakthrough for me about, stereotypes and, Just blew this whole alienation thing completely apart.
Yeah. So you realize that you're just reading it wrong, essentially. Is that kind of that you're like,
Yeah. No, I had like so many preconceived notions and stereotypes and biases and whatnot, and I had been working on that notion quite a bit about like my little triggers and my monkey mind going off. Then had been doing a lot of meditation and whatnot, and so I was noticing this kind of energy coming out of my own head and heart, and I was so excited by uh, by that revelation. I just raced home and wrote "I'm Not a Stranger," which starts with the lines, "As I wandered into your town, I was feeling just like a stranger, lonelier than being alone, watching pretty people pass by. I clear my mind of these thoughts of darkness and danger. Around the corner, here you come. I catch that funny look in your eye. It says, I know you. I don't know your name. Don't know where you're from, but I'm glad you came." And then it goes into the "I am not a stranger. I'm not a stranger." That's one whole verse and pre chorus right there. I hope you stick around to the end of this
yeah, check it out
podcast
at the
to
end. We're
hear
gonna
the
play it at the
recording.
end, and we got the lyrics on the. I'm basically just gonna play the video that you posted on YouTube, unless YouTube
Yeah.
wants to, take it down. But yeah, it's a great song. On the on this second version, this re-recording that you did, you worked with a lot of people. I know one. I want to give a shout out to Tim McLaughlin. He's on it, and he's somebody that I'm friends with. But mention all the other people that you worked with, and talk about how this recording came to be, because I think it's a great
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. Well, this is where the cancer thing comes in because I was going to spend the wintertime doing nothing, fall and winter doing nothing. But Donald Trump, the orange buffoon, got elected, and I and I knew that this immigrant issue was going to be flaring up,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, it has. And so I have always wanted to re-record this song because the original, done in 1990, had fake marimbas and a clave from hell. It's like this duck, 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 that just was terrible. And it was a good recording otherwise. It had the Eugene Peace Choir on it, and Katie Henry sang on it, and Gus Russell did a great job of programming the clave and the marimbas, and it was a popular tune for me on that cassette. It stood out like a sore thumb because everything else was acoustic guitars and mandolins and string basses and stuff, and then this freaking marimba tune. But it had such a good spirit and stuff to it that people dug it, and so I knew that if I could get a good re-recording, it was going to be worthwhile. I really, and so I didn't want to produce it myself because I've been producing all these other tracks, most of which you've played. Like, well, whatever. It's like they can go to my Bandcamp page has got all the new stuff on it.
Yeah,
Buffalo
Lea Jones,
Romeo,
Lea Jones. Yeah, Lee, just
Bandcamp,
Lee and his
buffaloromeo.bandcamp.com.
yeah.
Buffalo Romeo. So, uh, uh, and so Don Latarski and I go all the way back to the 70s. And he's kind of a guitar god around here, and taught at was a professor at the U of O School of Jazz for, I don't know how long he was there, 10, 20 years. And he played in several bands, and he's put out loads of records, and he's just like this amazing person and guitar player.
Did he work with Keenan at all?
A little bit early on. He gave him a few lessons before Cannon moved on to some other teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah, Don.
Keenan Dorn was a younger guy that you worked with Buffalo Romeo, and that's how I found out about you. Like I said, at the Opry, and
Yeah.
you guys were, again. I talked a little bit about multi-generational. I think maybe you enjoy this, where Keenan was like what 30, 40 years younger than you, and you
40.
guys 40 years younger than you, and you guys were this duo, and it was amazing, and it really worked, and I mean, it really caught my eye, and that is not my style of music, So,
Yeah, no,
uh,
it was badass, man. I do a good single. I played solo for off and on for quite a long time,
it's
and
yeah, it was
and
good.
I play a heavy acoustic guitar with a lot of walking bass lines, and Keenan's when we started out, he was, I think, 16, and he played an acoustic guitar, and it just ripped off.
So he
Solo.
was 16. So you bought him from Diddy, and then no.
We were at a campfire, the spring steamboat steamboat ball fields down there on North Umpqua, I guess it is. And we were at a camp out with, a few dozen people, and there was a campfire, and they wanted us to play sing-alongs, and we decided that we would just let the other guy do the sing-alongs because the other guy was really into it. And we just went and sat at a picnic table on the other side away from the noise and jammed for like an hour. And that was kind of it. We started playing together. I invited him to join up with Barefoot Leroy, which was a band who we had just lost our mandolin player. And so Keenan came in, and that band lasted with him in it for another year, maybe. And then it broke up, and Keenan and I just went off and did Buffalo Romeo. And the rest is history, man. We played up in Oak Ridge at the pub for 4 or 5 years, and then got centered down in 16 Tons Cafe.
And that's where you've been doing a lot of your most recent stuff, right?
Made that our home. Yeah, we kind of owned that patio. It's like, and we became the house band, along with a couple other bands that have played there regularly.
And you're going to be playing there. No, you're playing at Tsunami Books for your release of this song, right?
Yeah, I just got 100 of the CDs printed up, and with some instrumental cues from the Buffalo Romeo album, where the Buffalo Romeo instrumental cues, where you just take out all the vocals and play the instrumentals. And so that's what's on this CD. It's not like a commercial CD. It's in a paper wrapper, but it sounds really good. The mastered version of I Am Not a Stranger is, leads off, and it's the front piece. Anyway, you were asking
about the song. Yeah.
You asked me about the song, and Don Latarski, I begged him to produce it because I didn't want it to sound like something that I produced, because I've done that. I'm tired of my own production style, and this thing was really over my head in terms of how to make it much better than it was when I had my hands on it, because it's not my style of music. It's just like it was a world music feel with like kind of a West African go-go guitar kind of thing going on. And so Don said, yeah, he would do it. And then the next person I called up was Katie Henry, who had sung on the 1990 version. And after, she was in Babes with Axes with Laura Kemp and a couple other women, and they were like stars in their own right for several years. So while I was gone, I never got to see them live, unfortunately, but I've heard their stuff. And so she said, yeah, she would sing on it. And so I got Don Latarski to produce it and Katie Henry to sing on it. And Don recommended Scoot McGuire on bass and Tim McLaughlin. I invited him, and Don said, why don't you just have him do all the guitars? I said, no, Don, you get to do a guitar too. And he's all right. So you got the two guitars are Don Latarski and Tim McLaughlin. Not bad lineup.
No. They're both teachers. I mean, they're both music teachers, and like some of the best Eugene has to offer.
Tim's like kind of a generation. He's like at least one generation younger, more like two again than Don, and maybe one. But anyway, he's a stupendous trumpet player too, I hear. But
from 11 Eyes back in the day. Not to get sidetracked, but my first hip hop group.
This is all about getting sidetracked.
I know, right? My first hip hop group, the Antidope. And this is silly to talk about to someone that makes music of your caliber, but because I just had fun with it, but that's what it's all about. But still, my first ever DJ was the drummer from 11 Eyes, which was Tim McLaughlin's band, JD, and the Turntable Enabler. And nice. And man, he was a top-notch musician. I mean, that was a talented guy that was backing us. And so we put on we had no business being on stage, and he loved it. And so it was a lot of fun. And it meant a lot to me that somebody that was in such a respectable band like 11 Eyes, that they
Yeah.
would treat us like we belonged on stage, because the reality is we worked really, really hard on what we did. And
Yeah.
that's all that matters, is like, if you put your time and work into it, then you should get a chance, like
Yeah.
you should get a chance on stage. But
If you got
anyways,
one guy, who knows what he's doing, it makes a one person, I should say, who knows what they are doing. It makes a
yeah,
huge difference. So that's good.
between the
That's
four of
good.
us, there was almost one. It was,
Uh-huh.
but yeah. But anyway, go ahead. So working
Oh,
with Tim and
so
Don
anyway,
Lagarde. Yeah.
Tim recommended Parker Cohen on drums, and Don didn't know Parker, but Tim made a good recommendation because Parker played drums. Billy Barnett at Gung Ho made an exception and said he would record this individual song. He usually does albums, and so he's kind of the ace studio in the Willamette Valley as far as I'm concerned. And I found out why by the time we finished mixing, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Where's this at? Is it in Eugene?
He's out off of Lorraine, off of out there, out past Four Corners,
Yeah.
just on a little side road, and got a nice studio with couple of different three different isolation booths, I think,
Wow.
and he does some old school style recording stuff, and which I can't even begin to describe.
No.
But he's not only a stupendous engineer, but he's also got ears just out to here. It's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
So
There's that generation, and I'm guessing an age. I might imagine he's not 20, but like the analog production music generation is mind blowing. I don't think that people understand. I mean, like I was talking that little bit about hip hop, and when I got into it, because I could get into it, is the reality of how I got into it. Because it's so easy to do nowadays with digital production, and I didn't have the patience to actually like put in the effort. I do have creativity. I just don't have the attention span sometimes. Man, we lost you. Hopefully you come back. There you go. But you see some of the stuff, if you ever get a chance to watch like about the Beatles, not you, but just people listening. I know you know this stuff, but the way that the production that went into like the Beatles and some of those classics.
Oh my God. They're recording on 4-track.
I know, and it's absolutely bananas how good it sounds, and it's just, there's nothing.
They recorded Sgt. Pepper on 4 tracks of tape.
And a lot of the legend is that that song is how sampling was accidentally created. I mean, this is a debate among music. Have you heard that whole argument that, like, I've heard this whole thing about how the Sgt. Pepper's is really what not inspired hip hop, but what led to sampling. Because they accidentally sampled themselves and then realized it, and then like people in jazz and all these different things that were, looking at different genres, like what are these guys doing, and like stealing different. I mean, everybody stole everything, So
at any rate, you're the analog generation. We had. I mean, I was recording stuff on like synced up cassette decks, two cassette decks, and you could like play. You could record a left and right channel, and then move the tape over to the other machine and play it back, and then record another left and right channel. So you got a 4-channel recording on 2 cassette decks, and you could actually do 6 if you did it one more time, but the cassette decks didn't play at the same speed. So it kind of became either really draggy or kind of chipmunky.
That's how you turn. I had a church 44-track player, 45 player, and my aunt gave it to me because it was basically to them. They're like, you guys can destroy this. Like I was like 7 or 8 years old. They're like, just play with this till you wear it out, And so I'd scratch on it and all these things and all these old 5s that are probably worth 10 grand now. But one of them was Madonna, Open Your Heart. And I always used to joke because that was when Baywatch was really popular, and so I would like change the speed and it would go, open your heart to me. And it turned into David Hasselhoff.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyhow, so Billy Barnett is this monster engineer who uses a number of old school tricks, and just it was astounding watching the mix. But anyway, we did about 3-4 hours in the studio with the band, laying down the bass, drums, and 2 guitars. Tim and Don on guitars, and a scratch vocal from me. Scratch vocals like the not permanent vocal. And then we took that and we went to the Golden Lab, which is Bo Eastland, for, putting in all the vocals. And Don Latarski added a thing called the Nashville guitar.
It's really
And
good.
and
A
then
lot of
this
singers too.
baritone uke, which is what that little solo thing in the middle of the main body of the song is. It's like a baritone uke. And then Don had also recommended this young man named Riley Galt to come in and play percussion. And we got him to come in. And this was mind-boggling. I mean, he's all into studying, these various instruments and drumming styles from all over the place, but primarily West Africa. And so he came in and played through all 6 minutes, of this song, probably on 10 different instruments, so probably went through it about 20 times, overall, and laid down just some incredible percussion, which there is a percussion break right in the middle of the song that establishes, from the main body of the song, which was the original 4 minutes. And then there's the percussion break. And then there's another 2.5 minutes of what we call a tail out, which has just kind of a different groove to it. And it's kind of we went for a more kind of dreamy feel back there. And we have all these different voices, it's like getting the vocalists for this thing was an incredible adventure. The last one we put in was Fish Martinez singing in a Siletz, Indian Siletz tribe dialect. I am not a stranger. And I could never get a Palestinian. I really wanted to get a Palestinian to come in and sing I Am Not a Stranger, but try as I might over 3 months, I could not. And I understand why nobody wanted to come above ground in this political climate with the
unfortunately,
water buffalo rampaging around.
Yeah.
God, and ripping people off the streets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, in a reverse way, what this song is about. It's about, everybody's got the same kind of thing going on at their heart. Deep inside, we feel the same, and we call it by so many names. I am not a stranger. But the amazing thing, you open your eyes and keep trying. Riley, it turns out, worked with Haitian people down in the Southeast US. And he turned us on to this guy who we decided to go with his stage name because he's a U.S. naturalized U.S. citizen, but we just didn't want to take any chances. And his stage name is Shalem, Shale, with it slants from the right to the left, and Shalem. We worked for 3 months trying to get things that we could use in the recording. And Shalem ends up like dominating the back half of the tail out of the song. He wrote an entire verse. And I was like, God, man, would you just lighten up? We can't use all this stuff. And the guys were the rest of the guys in the mixing room were like, no. You got to use that. That's the best thing ever. And Shalem is a.
You mean like you were worried for them that it would drown them out? Is that kind of like your?
No. I was just like wanting a line here in one language, a line here in another language, and he kept throwing in 4 lines. I mean, he's like writing these opuses.
Well, when the inspiration hits, I mean.
Well, when you hear the stuff, he's in the first half of the song when the voices first come in. There's one by Lee Wolf, that's Li Wolf, where she sings "Yo no soy extranjera," I'm not a stranger, the Latina version of that, and then Shalem comes in with this like 3-part harmony thing. And he's just freaking tearing it up. And then it goes into the percussion, and then a different Spanish language person, Ricardo Llamas, sings, and he comes out of the mist. I am not a stranger. And then Shalem, does his 4 lines of gorgeous lyrics, which are all about, my heart is full when you're near, you make me feel at home, and, golden joy fills my heart. I mean, it's gorgeous stuff. And then Fish Martinez, does his thing with a whoop at the end of it. And Katie Henry and I do a couple of little duets. And one of them actually is in Yemeni, because we couldn't get a Palestinian Arabic language person, so we faked that. It sounds pretty good. And oh God, so that was the kind of adventures we were going through getting the vocals. We brought in a handful of people to sing the chorus sections, and Jill from the Eugene Concert Choir, and a couple people from the Spanish Immersion School, and Ed Wolf and their two kids, including the high school junior, the young woman who sings the opening Spanish language, and then at the very end of the song, she gets another spot during the fade out. She has, I mean, after all the nonsense that's going on with the vocals, she has this crystal clear voice, and it's just ringing out, man. It's like so cool. And gosh, what else? Yeah.
Well, we can play it, but before we do, I wanted to at least give an update on your health. Like I had mentioned at the beginning, unfortunately, you've been battling cancer, and we had you on in the past, and you talked about communicating with cancer and how difficult that can be, because we talked about how some days you're open, some days you're not, some days you don't want to talk to people, some days you do, some days you want to, and different things, and
some people really don't want to talk about it at all,
and don't want to hear about it. Even people that that's the sad.
My talking generally happens on Facebook. That's my one social media. I got off of X for obvious reasons. I've been limping on to Blue Sky, but mainly I'm on Facebook. People know how to block me or like unfollow if they don't want to hear those stories. But for the most part, I heard that people, were appreciative of me being willing to share the ups and downs and ins and outs. Because and my wife, she was leery at first about me talking about it, but it's been 5 years. So catching up to the present, I'm currently sort of, as far as I know, on the last possible treatment for this metastatic squamous cell carcinoma stuff that is in some lymph nodes and had been pretty gnarly growing into my lungs until we started this Trodelvy. No, it's not Trodelvy. Maybe it's Trodelvy, but anyway, it's called Sakatujimab, which is a targeted immunotherapy, which kicked the cancer right back. Yeah, I mean, it like knocked it back to less than half of what was in my lungs. All the little dots disappeared, and the two big chunks kind of.
So it kicked it back, meaning it did well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. No. I thought you meant that it kicked it back, like it brought it back.
We were like we were kind of on our way out there, because this was the last stab. There was no.
Yeah.
We were out of alternatives. We tried everything.
I've kind of sensed that from some of your stuff. That I haven't read a lot of it.
I thought I was going to croak when we were doing the 22 recording in 2022. The Buffalo Romeo album.
Yeah.
Keenan was nice enough to help me record all of those songs that were my originals that we had been performing as Buffalo Romeo. And we spent a year in the studio making that record. And I wrote it and arranged the songs from the perspective of, I maybe have a year left at the most.
Yeah, like that's your opus. That's your legacy.
I know, right? But that was, so then I ruined that storyline by surviving another 2 years. Well,
I mean, thank God. I'm thankful for that. So.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been picking up on that a little bit. That there, it's tough because, for one, we don't spend a lot of time. We talk on social media, but it's tough to pick up on. You don't see everything that someone posts. You're busy. You live your own life, But then I do know that there's times where I do pick up on these little things, because social media is really interesting. How you feel connected to people, and feel a responsibility to kind of check in on your friends and different things. And there's positives, there's pros and cons with it. But there's been a few times where I've been like, wow, man, this is, I don't, I have a good friend that her name's Molly, and she had cystic fibrosis, and, she's over 40 now. She hates me for saying that, but she's over 40 now. And, I mean, it's a miracle that she's alive, and at a certain point, when somebody is chronically dealing with something, you get used to them surviving it. And then at a certain point, they won't. And
Yeah.
it's just a harsh thing, and it's just one of those things we always think that we just take shit for granted. And I just want to remind you how much I appreciate you and that I'm glad that I've gotten to know you. This has been something that I saw you perform and I'm like, I want to be friends with that guy. And
Nice.
it's happened. And I appreciate you for it. And to be honest, I know that you appreciate me, even you don't have to say it. So
Do you know about the podcast that
do
I
I
put
know
together?
about my podcast, your
No,
podcast?
my podcast.
And I know that this is that I inspired this and I love it. And so please tell us more about this. I do know your podcast because you have a great voice, better than mine. And you restarted a podcast. It's on your YouTube channel. So Lea Jones, Lea is Lea, and then Jones. Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, it's called Gathering Marbles.
Uh-huh.
Named after the fact that many of my friends are losing theirs. My generation.
Including me.
Yeah, well, yeah. I've got older friends in their 70s who have language retrieval issues or short-term memory loss. And for whatever reason,
I didn't know you were friends with Biden. I didn't know that.
shut up.
Anyway.
Yeah. God. Now you've gone and done it.
You've gone and done it. No. Yeah, anyway.
No, the weird thing about this medication was that it made me extremely verbal and chatty.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was writing a book, and I wrote the entire book called Gathering Marbles. And I was like, oh God, what am I going to do with this? I don't want to try to get into publishing or self-publishing or any of that crap.
Pretty good.
I haven't figured out how to use Substack yet. I'll probably put it up there at some point, but I realized that the way it was real episodic little, 4, 5, 6 paragraph sections about ideas about my youth and influences, and especially kind of how to describe it. Well, I'm calling it, riding the woo-woo choo-choo. It's like there's a lot of kind of cosmic sort of spiritual self-helpy references about paying attention and, overcoming, like that stereotype thing I was talking about with black guys in Chicago.
Yeah.
And, things that push my buttons, I mean, for instance, I was driving by the U of O in about 1985.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some guy busking on the street and I was like, God, I would never, ever do that. That is so gotta suck, I don't know why, but that was just my thing.
Sure.
I didn't know the word busking at the time either. There was a guy playing a guitar with his guitar case open out.
I know it sounds way dirtier than it is.
I'm going, damn, man. And so, that was one of those little moments where I noticed, because I had been meditating for about 6 months and getting my mind to shut up, so I would notice things like that flared up. And what flared up was that idea of like, whoa, that ought to really suck. And then I'm like, well, what is that about? And so the next day I took my guitar case and went out and sat up on the street out in front of the U of O bookstore and was playing my Jerry Jeff Walker stuff and my, Grateful Dead stuff and whatever. And there was this young woman sitting on the curb singing harmonies, and she knew all the same songs. And this was Katie Henry. And she became a very close friend of mine who I had been recording. I had been writing songs that I could not play solo, just like orchestral rock and roll stuff with lots of parts, lots of like horn lines and bass lines and none of them were like replicable with me just playing guitar, because my guitar playing was, especially back then, was somewhat limited. And so Katie took me on a little trip to Portland to see Michelle Shocked, who was on her debut U.S. tour for the Sharp Shell Shocked album, which included the one hit off of it, if you want to call it that, was Anchored Down in Anchorage. And so we went and saw her, and she was playing an acoustic guitar, and she was flat picking, and she was playing kind of bluegrassy, folky country rock stuff. and singing these original songs. And I was like, and for 2,000 people who were just eating it up, she was really great. And I was like, damn, I can do that, And so I came home that night and wrote a song that was like on the acoustic guitar, one voice, one guitar. And it was a good song. I played it for years and people loved it. And then I wrote a whole album's worth of that stuff.
So just started busking.
This was because of the.
That's right.
The moral of the busking. No, I never busked again. I did it that one time. Katie came out and just changed my life.
I was going to say the moral of the story is if you see somebody doing something that you judge them about, do it better than them, and then everything will work out well for you.
Yeah. It's good though. Something that pushes your buttons.
No, I know.
Toward it.
I do have a story. I do have my own "I'm Not a Stranger" story, and I think it needs to be said too. White guys talking about race, but I grew up in Oregon, and you spent most of your time in Oregon, and it's just not a super diverse place. And if you spend some time on campus, that there's more diversity, and that's amazing and welcomed. But I had to work through some of my own biases, and I have a story before we share the song of my own "I'm Not a Stranger" story. I got on the bus one time, and it was one of my first songs I ever wrote, and it is the song that I showed to Uncle Nancy, Joey Helpish, who taught me how to produce and all that stuff, and got me out of my shell. And I'm gonna spit the first little bit. It was a reggae version. I mean, that's why I wrote it. I had a reggae beat in my head, and it just said, "A place without race will disgrace no taste. Creation of separation is a waste of time spent and energy, a symmetry of sides portrayed with bigotry." And then it just goes on and on and on. But the point is, I got on the bus and I was the only white person on the bus. It was super diverse.
And it was on the bus
in Eugene. Well, yeah, I grew up. I didn't get my driver's license until I was almost I was like 30s.
That's a Grateful Dead joke.
Oh, yeah. Again.
Bus came
further.
by.
Sure. No, but so yeah, I get on the bus and I was the only white person on the bus, and it made me realize, this must be really uncomfortable when you're the minority, and it changed my whole perspective. And it was one moment where it flipped the script, and I want to say that the work just started that day. The work began that day. It's still something that I'm working on.
Yeah.
As far as eliminating and just educating myself and removing biases. There's defense mechanisms and there's outward racism. There's a different thing about being guarded about somebody that you may be unaware of. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's a defense mechanism. When you use it to weaponize and to belittle, then that is unacceptable.
Oh, yeah.
So I love the message of the song. I love you for sharing your stuff and your art. Lea Jones, your music is on Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. It's not. It's on
really,
Spotify.
no.
Some of it is.
This
song isn't.
This song is, and I don't know if I'm ever going to put it. I freaking Spotify, man.
Yeah.
What a ripoff.
It is crazy. But YouTube, you can listen, you can watch. I'm going to play the video after this, and you can also find it yourself. "I'm Not a Stranger" by Lea Jones and Friends. There's a music video on YouTube that has all the lyrics, and that's a really good watch. But do you have anything you want to add before we get out of here and play the song?
Yeah, it's easy enough to find. Just look up Lea Jones or Buffalo Romeo and, Hang On Ruthie and I Am Not a Stranger, and you'll come wading into a whole bunch of my music. And thank you for visiting. Yes.
Yeah, and I've played it on the podcast. You can also find it on my Spotify playlist on the podcast, any songs that are on Spotify.
This is very good heart music. I mean,
it's real upbeat. I love it. It's a great
incredible
song. It's a great message. A lot of great collaboration that went into making it that you explained today. So Lea Jones, thank you so much. And we're going to end this with the song. This is Lea Jones and Friends with the song "I Am Not a Stranger."
Right on.
As I wandered into your town, I was feeling just like a stranger. Yet lonelier than being alone, watching pretty people pass by. I clear my mind of these thoughts of darkness and danger. corner, here you come. I catch that funny look in your eye. It says, I know you, I don't know your name, don't know where you're from, but I'm glad you came. And suddenly I realize I am not a stranger. Yeah, see that light shine in your eye. I am not a stranger. Any place can be my home. I am not a stranger. I got friends in each new place I go with. I am not a stranger. Out in your town, you got faces round every corner. Yeah, who's a stranger now after all, but the mother's daughter or son? Oh, see the wall come down, people smiling like babies. You know that as you're looking for love, you are not the only one. No, no, no. You see, I know you, I don't know your name, don't know where you're from, but I'm glad you came. And suddenly you realize shine in your eyes. I am not a stranger. Now people come from foreign lands. I am not a stranger. All heart to heart, hand in hand. I am not a stranger. You know that deep inside we feel the same. I am not a stranger. And now we call it by so many names. I am not a stranger.
Yo no soy extranjera.
Que no hay cosa para mí.